Hello, thank you for tuning in. My name is Clayton Cottle, and I'm the president of the Sam Houston State University Masters of Business Administration Student Association, or the MBASA. Our organization is committed to building networks and building careers. Welcome to today's panel discussion, the value of an MBA in the post-COVID era. Before I begin, I want to encourage you all to follow our social media to stay up to date with any upcoming events or news. And if you're interested in joining, please reach out. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to today's panel and their host, Jamie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Dietrich. I'm the Relations Officer for the MBA Student Association. As Clayton said, today we have a panel that we will be discussing the value of an MBA or any graduate level degree in the post-COVID era. Joining us are two of our very own MBA faculty, Dr. Lindsay Clark and Dr. Carliss Miller, as well as one of our esteemed alumni, Mr. Dustin Gersch. I would like to start by taking a few minutes for each of our panelists, to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your background. Dr. Clark, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited. So as you said, I'm Lindsay Clark, and I got my PhD in professional writing from Oklahoma State University, where I was also the assistant director of technical writing. So I had the opportunity to work with students from engineering, oil and gas, and environmental science. So currently I'm an assistant professor here in the College of Business, and I teach business communication classes at the undergraduate and graduate level or managerial communication class. My research interests include visual and multimodal communication, writing in the disciplines, user experience, and leadership. And I'm also a Gallup certified strengths coach. So I get the opportunity to work with students and professionals and teams, developing and leveraging their natural talents for higher work impact. So thank you again for having me.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Miller, would you like to go next?
Sure, my name is Carliss Miller. I've been a professor at SAM for 4 years now. This is my third career. So I went to University of Texas at Arlington. I actually got my undergrad degree in broadcast communications technology, and I went to go work in radio. I did that and for a while, and I switched to the sales side, and the CEO suggested I go get a business degree. I said, oh, okay, sure. The reason why I say it like that is because I was a first-gen college student, and the goal for myself and the goal that my family had for me was just go get your bachelor's and then you're done. So when the CEO mentioned B school, I thought, oh, you just apply just like you go into undergrad, right? You know, everyone can do that. So I did. I got into the University of Florida, so I went there for my MBA, and I concentrated in HR management. And while I was there, one of my professors, which is funny because I now use his textbook in one of my classes, he asked if I'd ever thought about getting a PhD. Sir, I didn't even think about an MBA, so not at all. And that just sounds like a lot of reading and a lot of writing, and I'm so broke, and I would just like to make money and contribute back to my bills and to society. And so, but he worked with me, and he said it was something about how I asked questions, and then I got an offer from Procter & Gamble, and I was like, okay, we can revisit that whole academic conversation. They're giving me a signing bonus, and so I'm going to go and do some HR stuff at P&G. But that idea of a PhD and the intellectual curiosity, it never left me. And so I worked for P&G for a few years. And, you know, I think it's interesting what the topic of this conversation is, because I remember back then we were grappling with some of the same things, like how do we prepare for an uncertain future in terms of industry and society. So I just wanted more freedom to pursue research questions that I thought were interesting and fascinating. I used to like to say I'm interested in the social anomalies that exist in organizational contexts. I stopped saying that because I remember meeting this one senior faculty member. He was visiting, and he told me the last person he heard say that was a freelance journalist living out of his car. And so I didn't want living out of my car to be, you know, my ultimate future after getting a PhD. So I narrowed down my focus into studying leadership. dark side of leadership, leader-follower relationships, and diversity, specifically gender, race, ethnicity, and neurodiversity, and how we navigate and make sense of our perceived similarities and differences in the workplace.
Wow, awesome. Thank you. And Dustin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Dustin. I'm a Bearcat graduate of 2006. I'm a certified financial planner, and I also own a CPG or consumer packaged good company in my hometown of Giddings, Texas. And that's kind of my background.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for your participation in our panel today. It means so much to all of us, and we're super excited to hear your expertise on these discussion topics. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Our first discussion topic is the value of a master's degree. So Dustin, I'm going to start with you. You and I have had several conversations about some challenges and learning curves that you've experienced as an entrepreneur. So can you tell us a little bit about the value of a master's degree, or more specifically an MBA, since you're an entrepreneur, would have provided you along your journey?
So, yeah, so I do not have an MBA. I got my degree from SAM, and I will say I have spent. I think the value would have sped up a lot of the learning curves that I had to learn along the way. So I spent right about $450,000 in education since I'm on Zoom, I can do this, on my master's degree for consumer packaged goods. And I doubt that master's cost $450,000 or $500,000. So I think if I would have had some of those tools in my toolbox or arrows in my quiver, that maybe I could have missed a lot of the education that I had to pay for along the way. So it would have totally helped me out a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Dustin. Dr. Miller and Dr. Clark, I'll direct this next question to both of you. And Dr. Miller, if you want to start off for us, what do you feel is most valuable about obtaining a master's degree?
Well, I definitely think it depends on the person and their ultimate goal. So I don't think it's for everyone, and I definitely don't think everyone would see the ROI in pursuing a master's degree or MBA. I think if a person is very clear on their career goals, and an MBA or a master's will help fill in that, if they've done their own career gap analysis, this is where I want to be, this is where I am, this is lacking, then it would make sense for them. And the cool thing about a master's compared to undergrad, at least for me, is that I'm a little more mature. I'm a little more, hopefully, more clear on my career path, hopefully, or at least, what I tell myself. And so I'm more interested in taking the classes. I don't have to take, this is going to be on Zoom. I don't have to take a bunch of.
Just say it.
I don't have to take a bunch of filler classes that may or may not be aligned with my interests or career goals. And I can have more of a narrow focus, even if it's not my area of concentration, but it'll help me be a well-rounded professional. So for instance, I knew I wanted to study human resource management, organizational behavior, but I took finance, I took accounting, I took operations management. But all of those courses help me to be able to have an intelligent conversation and be able to make good decisions and have a seat at the table, not just in presence, but also in thought. So that helps contribute to the value, and it can serve as an intrinsic motivator. And that's why I hope that those who decide to pursue really look at that opportunity and are willing to invest more, because it's more about what you put in, and what you've aligned as important is what you'll get out of it. So that's why I love that Dustin shared with us how he realized along the way that, hey, I got to invest in this piece, and cost him a bit less to just come back on to his Bearcat family.
Well, thank you for your honesty. I really appreciate that. Dr. Clark, do you have anything to add?
I think anytime you work towards an advanced degree, you're going to be more competitive in the job market. You have the opportunity to kind of specialize in what you really want to learn about. Like she was saying, once you kind of figure out that trajectory that you want to take, a master's is going to give you that advanced training. But I think an MBA in particular is really special, especially here at SAM, because it's such a comprehensive look. It really gives you the big picture of kind of the different levels of communication and organization in a business, and you come out with a really well-rounded view that allows you to be a good leader. And I also like that you're able to customize a little bit if you find, as you kind of explore the different types of classes you're doing, a direction that you might want to really invest in and take some, specific electives towards that and some advanced training towards that. So I think an MBA in particular really sets people on the path to be leaders, managers, supervisors, to kind of move ahead in their career path.
Awesome. Dustin, did you want to add anything to that one?
Well, I can save it, but I think if I can go off of like what Dr. Miller said, I listen to a lot of motivational stuff. I write quotes on my door in my office. And Kobe Bryant used to say when he looked for investors, he wanted someone that was obsessive. And I think, and again, depending on where you are, and I think Dr. Miller hit it perfect, like that gap, right? If you don't know where you're going, so the best thing is to start with the end in mind. And so if you get an MBA and you can totally be focused and obsessive, so I want to use that word obsessive, because it's like you know what you're trying to do, but there's so many different tools to help you get there. But if you're obsessive, you're going to want to know all the ins and outs because you want to be able to apply it, not just to check a box, but to apply it. And so I think, like she said, no filler classes or fluff classes, but really specific, dialed in to what you're trying to accomplish, I think would have been a huge help.
Great. Well, thank you all for your comments. I think this leads us perfectly into our next discussion about return on investment. So Dr. Clark, I'm going to let you start us off on this one. What new opportunity costs do you feel are presented for students pursuing an MBA during COVID?
So I think about this in a couple of different ways. First, what we might lose inwardly is this sort of shift in the curriculum. Now that we're all online, you're not having the in-class person experience. You don't have that maybe same cohort feel. There is a learning curve, right, related to technology. Outwardly, fewer networking opportunities, hiring practices are changing, right? But I do think that students who are in the MBA program now are developing a whole new skill set. And so I just think about the tremendous opportunities if we can, kind of look at the positives, even though it's sort of challenges, of the type of insight that we're getting from being in this situation, or students who want to pursue an MBA degree in this situation, is think about how workplaces are changing right now. I mean, a lot of our MBA students I know have worked at home for weeks or months, or still are, or some sort of version of this. We're all sort of learning as we go, but I'm actually excited if we can sort of learn how to embrace it, of what that means in terms of how, our approaches to work and how they may change. And so from being a student in this sort of situation, while we have these extra challenges, extra hardships, this learning curve that we're all sort of on right now, I think the insight that we will get from that will have larger payoffs. So, thinking about when you're a manager, what if your team is spread out all over the United States? Some companies are shutting down their offices and making salary adjustments. If you live in Kansas, they don't have to pay you to be in California, right? And so there are all these ways that communication will have to change, management will have to change, what supervision and oversight going to look like. And so I just think while we are losing a little bit, I think we are gaining a lot, and even we don't even know what other kind of benefits could come from this. Startups, new kinds of opportunity technology.
Great, thank you. Dr. Miller, do you want to go next?
Sure. So opportunity cost. If we go to the definition of opportunity cost, we think about the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen, right? So the opportunity cost of pursuing an MBA. Again, it's going to be different for each person, depending on, do they have a job? Were they furloughed? Were they laid off? Are they now able to have a little more flexibility in working from home? Are they asked to do more work? Are they, you think about the alternatives. Do you have the opportunity? Do you have kids at home now that you're virtual schooling? Do you have parents that you now have to take care of? And so you can't move around the way you're used to. So even if you want to do things the way they were. So to me, the opportunity costs have a lot more to do with our mental health and well-being, our emotional health and well-being, and just thinking about how every decision now has layered implications. So like Dr. Clark, I am actually excited about this time because this is extremely disruptive, right? Extremely disruptive, but as a friend and I, whenever we talk about innovation, he has this thing where he says, are you going to be the disrupted or the disruptor? I'm like, well, I can't help but be the disrupted, but I can be, I can look for ways to be the disruptor in this situation and try to make the most of it. So someone may think, is this the right time for me to pursue an advanced degree if, my job situation is so uncertain? I'd say, to me, while the world is figuring itself out, it's a great opportunity to build skills, establish networks, document what you're learning through this. I don't know any employer right now or in the future that's going to look at a student and say, oh, I don't like the fact that you've built up a new skill in agility, that you know how to adjust quickly, you know how to be, you're resilient, you know how to solve problems creatively, you were able to rise in the midst and still get all of this work done and still figure out how to work with individuals remotely while the world was on fire, literally. So I think it could be looked at as an opportunity cost, but also as an opportunity to refine some skills and build some new relationships and communicate or look at different ways to communicate what you've gained, what skills, knowledge, relationships you've been able to develop during this time.
Awesome. Thank you. Dustin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll go back because I think both doctors said it great. I mean, it goes back to starting with the end in mind. So if you know what you're trying to accomplish, the giving up of money, the giving up of time, whatever that cost is, because it doesn't all have to be monetary, just kind of weighing it out. And because you can, right, I think, again, motivational stuff, right? Everybody can start stuff off of excitement, but then that fades. So again, understanding where your gap is and what you're trying to accomplish as a person or as a parent or as a spouse or as whatever your role is in life, kind of understanding the why and having the end in sight when things do get tough, when you're up at, either 5 a.m. in the morning before the kids wake up, or if you're staying up till midnight after the kids go to bed, or whatever it may be, that you have your why and your purpose for what you're doing. That's getting an MBA or not getting an MBA. It's all about your why. So if you know what your why is, that drives you through once the glitter or once the shine fades, and you have to kind of keep plowing. That's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. That's really great. All of you are really great. I think I remind myself often what my goals are and have to reevaluate that and keep pushing myself. I'm new to the MBA program, so I feel like that makes me a little bit unique because I know we have some that are undergraduates that have come right into the master's program, but our program is very diverse. So we have lots of people who've been in the industry for years and they're coming back to get their master's. And I'm sure opportunity cost is very sensitive to them with what you have to give up. Because I know me personally, I've had to make a lot of adjustments in my life. So we will move on to our next question. And Dr. Miller, I'm going to direct that to you. Are there any specific industries you think MBA students should consider more or avoid completely?
avoid. So, okay. I would look at the future of automation. I would pay very close attention to what jobs are going to require more knowledge capital. So there are different industries, and I wish I would have thought to bring my chart. I have this industry chart that if you look at, okay, here are some of the jobs that are going to become more automated. These are the ones that aren't going to, that you won't be able to automate completely, like education. And I would say go there. If you start to look at the future of work, so I can't say one specific industry, but I look at the ONET and I look at the Occupational Outlook Handbook to see what jobs and what industries are on the rise. Because, there's some predictive analytics there that are showing you like, okay, this job isn't going to go away. This is going to probably sound strange, but one of the jobs that has the most potential growth opportunity right now is professional organizing. Right? Who knew? There's currently a team who has a show on Netflix now just dedicated to professional organizing, because people's lives are so chaotic and they're like, just do this for me, help my life work. But yeah, and so you think about what kind of skills a person would need to have, not just to be able to organize your files, but your entire life. You probably have to be a bit obsessive, right? You have to try to be able to make a lot of sense out of chaos. So that's one example. Cybersecurity. So the more and more we are remote and we're online and we're doing things virtually and digitally, we also become more and more vulnerable to risk and to threats. And so understanding cybersecurity, not only from, you don't have to be a computer scientist to understand cybersecurity. You can be in sales. You can also be on the behavioral side. Like, how do we get employees to practice, from a behavioral standpoint, better security practices when they're at work and when they're at home? Because if we're working more and more on our personal devices to get work done, we could also be making the company vulnerable. Dustin, I see you smile. Is this resonating a little bit?
That's why the computer screen's up here.
Yeah. I'd say, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and believe it or not, artificial intelligence touches every function that one can think of. So I know sometimes our students can be a little afraid of that and just digital transformation in and of itself. But I say, don't be afraid of the unknown. Just figure out your place within that. A movie that I love that helps illustrate this is Hidden Figures. There's this scene with Hidden Figures where they, first you have this team of women who are human computers, right? And then they see this big IBM coming in. It's like, oh no, we're about to be obsolete. We're about to be out of the job. So what does she do? She studies the manual because no one knows how to get this big old mountain computer to work. And so then she learns how to create value for herself and for her team. And so regardless of the industry, I think it's more than industry, it's more about function and knowledge capital, about being able to do what we currently do, but do it differently. So I'm sorry, that was a long-winded way to answer that.
No problem at all. Dr. Clark, do you want to jump in next?
Sure. I just wanted to add on that I think our MBA students are really ambitious and creative. And so when I read this question, immediately I thought, go for the dynamic fields that are really changing right now, technology and medical fields. But I read a study last year, I think by the Princeton Review, that said, like, where are the industries that MBAs are the happiest, right? And some of the banking and finance industries were the lowest in terms of people who reported for this study. And the ones that were more dynamic were up towards the top. So I think in figuring out industry, I don't think any of them should be avoided, right? But I think it's a really individualized decision. So I'm always going to advocate for people to think about, like he was saying, like, what's your why, right? To try to align when, what you want to do with with your interests, your passions, right? Where you're going to be satisfied, where you're going to be challenged, what kind of workplace culture you actually want to be in. I think not enough people think about that or intentionally plan for that or go for that, knowing that also there are decisions about like, I've got to put food on the table, right? And so maybe I want to go for the more stable industries, right? But it was interesting in the study from last year about how the most stable industries in business were where MBAs reported being the least happy because there wasn't that room for innovation and development and sort of this feeling of stagnation. So I'm curious to see how that might change as some of these industries maybe are becoming more dynamic and changing. So I just wanted to add that on.
Thank you. Dustin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would say, because of course I do not have the data that the doctors do, but of course I'm going to come from an owner standpoint, and I own two businesses. So I'm a certified financial planner, and I manage a little over $60 million in assets. And I also have my company Paleo Powder, which was an accident that is now, we'll do over $1 million in revenue this year. But I think what Dr. Miller said was being the disruptor. So, and then even what Dr. Clark was talking about, being happy. From the financial planning side of it, I argue that it's not, you either have the money or you don't. So when you get to that point, it's going to be more than money. It's the psychological. Do I have people to talk to? Do I have do I have any value? Do I give any value to society? So I argue that as we get older and as everything changes, people are going to work longer, or maybe that work changes from money to more interpersonal. But then, like with our seasoning company, so it's called Paleo Powder Seasoning. I used to weigh 315 pounds. And so by me losing over 50 pounds, I started a seasoning that was focused on people with dietary needs, not food. And so that was kind of the disruptor, because in the CPG space or consumer packaged goods space or spice space, you kind of check the box. Is it steak? Is it fish? Is it chicken? Is it ethnic? Is it whatever it is, right? There's boxes. And so the way I approached it was, if you're just trying to eat sugar-free, gluten-free, clean, so like paleo, keto, heart health, zero salt, autoimmune issues, no peppers or nightshades, IBS focus. So we were actually going after the same old category with the same ingredients. We were just coming at it at a different approach, focusing on the consumer, not the food. And so I think we've been successful because, one, it's passion, as Dr. Clark said, right? Kind of that excitement of why you get up either early in the morning or like I didn't get home till 9 o'clock last night. So, that kind of excitement and passion to problem solve and do stuff, but also to be able to, like she said, to be the disruptor, not the disrupted. And so I think there's probably some smart stuff out there to tell you what sector or industries might be the best. I'm from having kind of both sides of the fence. I love my Paleo Powder company because I get to problem solve every day. I get challenges every day. It's my baby. It's not even work. It's a different thought process. Being the financial advisor, I love doing it. I love the problem solving of it, but it's got its own banking and finance, as Dr. Clark said. If I got a survey, I'd probably answer it the same way she got it.
All right. Well, I wanted to go ahead and transition to our next topic, leadership and communications. So Dustin, let's start off with you and tell us about a time that your leadership was critical in your company and how you handled that specific situation.
Well, so the year was 2020 and the world came crashing in. And so, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My grandpa did air conditioning. My dad did air conditioning. My stepdad owns his own insurance company. So I kind of grew up that way. I've been to professional training classes. So with Paleo Powder growing, especially with this year, with the pandemic hitting and everything hitting, the run on toilet paper, the run on almost all products, it was keeping up with demand and at the same time making sure you get the right ingredients or supplies, trying to increase margin, so that you can stay profitable, so that you can pay back lines of credit, so you can grow. This year, really focusing on how we can, like one or two. So like for me, number one thing was increase profit margin this year. And then the steps below that were to implement how we're going to do that internally inside the business and not outsource stuff. So I live in a town of 5,000 people. I don't know if I lead on purpose, or if it's just how I want to help other people, again, in my community that don't have an opportunity. Because I tell them every time they touch something, it's going to over 2,000 Walmarts nationwide. We're in over 5,800 stores nationwide. So someone that just has a high school education still adds value, right? And the importance of why, they're filling these bags or social media or whatever. So for me, trying to have a plan, because I think that's what a leader should have, is have a long-term vision. But also, like Mike Tyson says, we all have a plan until we get punched in the face. And this year was definitely a punch in the face. And so to be able to react in a calm, consistent way. And the other thing I'll say is with leadership is all my employees know what our goal is as a company, what we're trying to accomplish. It's full transparency. I probably overshare too much at sometimes, but I do want everybody on board to understand I'm not driving a Mercedes. I'm not wearing a Rolex. I do everything first to explain it to people. So I think everybody's got a different take on it. In my brain, leadership is you're driving the ship forward. You have a plan. You have to be able to adjust if you're driving the ship, the CEO, whatever you are. It's just been, I think for everybody's just been a total world upside down. And I think that I've been able to do it with such a great team and guide them in the right way and hopefully listen to them, because I think as Jamie and I were talking, there are probably some classes I wish I would have took to speed everything up, but I'm a little hard-headed, so my education track is a little longer.
Awesome. Thanks, Dustin. Okay, so next, let's discuss skills that entice an employer to hire an MBA. Dr. Clark, tell us what you think are the most desirable skills for an MBA graduate, and do you think those desirable skills have shifted at all since the beginning of the pandemic?
I do think there has been a shift and will continue to be a shift. I think expectations and workplace realities are changing. They're in flux right now. I think it's maybe going to be a higher stakes situation for our MBA students, because there's going to be kind of another level of management involved. And so companies, some companies do remote work, right, and have people spread out, of course. But I just feel like there's this new layer of relationship building that I think adds an extra challenge. So I mentioned earlier, networking opportunities may be fewer, and they're going to probably be virtual, or you'll be in a mask. There's all this kind of non-verbal body language cues that we use to build relationships that we're not getting, right? We may not ever see each other like fully again. But I think the skills are going to be related to leadership and communication specifically. And I just think about scenarios. So I think if you can demonstrate to an employer that you are, number one, ready to work, but also like willing to be flexible, and maybe have some strategies about, okay, if I am managing or supervising people at different levels who are, I'm not seeing them in a conference room once a week, and how am I going to supervise? How am I going to check progress? How am I going to manage conflict? How am I going to, facilitate engagement and buy-in, right? How do you get people motivated for the mission? How do you give feedback? All in this kind of new scenario. So I think those might be the ones that I would encourage people who are interviewing to kind of focus on. Acknowledging that like everybody's sort of trying to figure it out, but I think if you can show some proficiency, or at least some like awareness about some ways in which you have a plan, right, as Dustin mentioned, but also maybe have still some learning to do and you're open to that, I think that's going to read very well because you never want to look like in an interview that you know everything, you have it all figured out, right? So actually it gives us a good opportunity for some vulnerability as well.
Great, thank you. Dr. Miller, do you agree, or do you have other skills you feel are more prominent?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I feel like either we're drinking from the same Kool-Aid or writing in the same journal, all of us. If anyone in 2020 knows what Kool-Aid is, but absolutely, I do think the skills that are going to be required are going to be much more on the human and empathy side. gone are the days of leadership where you do something because I said so, or because you fear that what punishment I may render down and what discipline. I mean, it's not even working in the military anymore. So it's going to require just the skills under empathy, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, all that soft, fuzzy stuff that people used to say, oh, you leave that at the door when you come to work. Well, we're working from my kitchen, so it's all here. and having a little vulnerability. I sometimes if I get on a research meeting or a meeting with someone, I start with apologies in advance if one of my children Zoom bombs our meeting. And so, just being flexible on, expectations. You don't really bring your kids to work. Well, guess what? Now we've brought work to my kids. So, or to my husband who wants to make a sandwich in the background when I told him I had a meeting. But gratefully that didn't happen today. So I think allowing people to be more authentic and having more freedom to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So being able to articulate that to an employer, that question, tell me about a time when you had to manage conflict and it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. Being able to articulate a real, genuine answer. Well, this is what happened. It didn't go the way I wanted to but what I've learned from that when I'm relating to others and, fill in the blank, also understanding the importance of situational awareness. Everyone's going to be motivated differently. Some people are going to be at that point of, if we can still subscribe to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they're going to be at that life stage where, the increase in pay doesn't really get them jazzed and going anymore, but they're at that need of self-actualization. But then if you're fresh from undergrad going to MBA, you're like, nah, I need to get paid. So everyone's going to be motivated a little differently. Some people are going to need extrinsic value. Some people are going to need more of intrinsic motivators. And being able to articulate if you're trying to get a leadership role, that you understand the differences with those and how to motivate a staff that may be dealing with just a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. I think something that we do very well that's unique to SAM is that our students aren't afraid to work hard. Our students are excited to learn. Our students are willing to just keep going, and I think that's something you can't really teach someone, but if we empower our students, like what we do as professors, to say, okay, you messed up on that one. Let me show you what you did, what you can do differently, and just come back, instead of ignoring them or beating them down in the ground. I know that's what we try to do. I feel the same way, Dr. Clark. I think another important skill is strategic decision-making, goal setting. Dustin said, knowing your why. It may sound very easy, but it's not. You actually need to do some of the deep work, and being able to craft a strategy for yourself. It can show that you can do that for others, for a team, for an entire department, a business unit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Dustin, will you tell us about a few of the top strengths that you have developed on your entrepreneurial journey?
Problem solving, being quick on my toes. I've kind of thinking about this because kind of piggyback off of what Dr. Miller and Dr. Clark said. I'll take you two different paths. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur or a business owner, being able to problem solve, being able to set goals, be able to manage people. And again, it's not 1960. So being able to manage people and communicate to them on certain levels is super important. Flip side as an employee, I would say is the same darn thing. Being able to problem solve. I can tell you as a business owner, the things that make me the most excited about employees and partners and team members is that when they totally step up and they see the problem, they solve the problem, they fix the problem, and then they tell me about it, right? Or they don't even tell me at all, and I don't even care about it because as me as the owner in my small business, I've got 100 irons in the fire. And of course, just as you go up the size of business, the fire gets a lot bigger and a lot more irons and a lot bigger irons. So even if you're in leadership or if you're an employee and you really want to climb those ranks. I think if you're a problem solver, if you like that challenge, I think it's what Dr. Miller said about, either it's not about the money, it's about, kind of the satisfaction or enjoyment or challenge that I get as a human being. But then I would argue that if you're brand new and scrapping for cash, that if you can problem solve and you can take care of things and take it off the owner or management's plate, you're going to start making more bank. You're going to start moving up that ladder. And so it doesn't, I would say as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, I can't, we'd be on it all day if I just told you the problems I had this morning. Or not problems. I don't say problems. They're road bumps that we need to address and move forward on.
I love that, road bump. So I'm going to remember that. Well, we have come to our last and final question. So in closing, what advice do you have to graduate students that may be worried about graduating into the current climate? Dr. Clark, we'll let you start us off.
2 words came to mind when I read this question: courage and flexibility. So we know there are going to be challenges. There are so many unknowns, totally legit to be worried, right? But I think, at least for me, the thing that counteracts my anxiety the most is information. And so the advice I would give is to stay on top of what is going on. Continue being a student, right? Even after you graduate. Pay attention to new developments, hone in and become proficient on looking for opportunities. And this connects to some of the other things we were talking about. If you're thinking about what industry you might want to get into, things that are changing, the ways in which work approaches are changing. I think that would be my advice, is to just stay tuned in, read, research, look for opportunities, and pay attention.
Awesome. Dr. Miller?
Yes, my advice would be take this opportunity to reflect, know yourself, know your value proposition, be able to articulate what you bring to the table, and also be aware of what you need from an organization or an institution or a relationship. And that starts with doing some deep self-reflection. There's lots of tools out there to help, but being a student of yourself and identifying your own areas of development that you want to work on, that'll help you acknowledge, or at least start to think about, who would be the right people that I need to meet, the right relationships that I need to craft. This is a time of reflection, making some changes if need be, continuing to keep your ear to the ground or the air or the airwaves. If I could piggyback on what Dr. Clark said, yes, be a student, regardless if you have a degree, don't have a degree. Podcasts, Wall Street Journal, know what's going on or what's coming. Look at the section on the Wall Street Journal called The Future of Work. That'll give you some ideas on what we're preparing for tomorrow, that the jobs that we haven't done today. And I would say, don't be driven by fear. I know that's not like a real technical skill, but resist the urge to give into fear, and try to see, like Dustin said, if a problem or an obstacle comes, that it's momentary. Don't catastrophize any road bump. Okay. So don't give into fear. Look at the opportunities, brainstorm on the opportunities, pull someone into your brainstorming session if you need to.
Great. Dustin, what final words of wisdom do you have for us?
Everything has been perfect. I'll piggyback or jump onto what they've said, because they're the doctors. But 3 things. 1, know your why. Okay. Again, self-reflecting to understand who you are, what makes you happy, understand your why, because that will get you through a lot of hell. Be obsessive. So whatever you're going to do, be obsessive. I will tell everybody, I've been very fortunate because I'm an outgoing person. So reach out to anybody that will give you time wants you to succeed. And so just suck that out of them and just absorb as much as you can and learn as much as you can. And then 3, I think, I don't know if it was Dr. Clark or Dr. Miller, but I would always say be an optimist. When you go into, I've had a ton of crappy meetings. I've had a ton of things where I failed at. But what I think a good thing that my wife will say about me is that I always find the positive out of it. So it might have been an hour meeting, but I picked out one word, one sentence out of it that I could add to my vocabulary or add to how I communicate, or, hey, you know what, I can use this in this sort of situation or application. So, know your why, be obsessive, and be an optimist. And I don't care if you're an owner or an employee, that's going to make you successful.
This has always been a tremendous value to us. Any interview or panel that can have a Kobe Bryant and a Mike Tyson quote in the same 1 hour segment it has to be great. Well, it's been truly wonderful. The discussion day has been great. Thank you all of our panelists for the insights and the advice that you provided. It can't be overstated how appreciative we are as students to hear this from you all and to kind of get a glimpse of the reality into some of the situations. We really are appreciative. And of course, as always, thank you to Jamie for her excellent moderation skills, and to Jonathan Kinsey, who is in the background. He's the vice president of the MBASA. He's handling all the technical elements of today's recording. And just one final thing, the MBASA, we're committed to building networks and building careers, and we encourage all the students to get involved with our organization. Thank you for tuning in to today's panel, and we look forward to seeing you next time.